I'm going to show you an absolutely crushing attack by Maja Chiburdanidze, who was Women's World Champion from 1978 till 1991. Remember, if you're not a subscriber to the channel, then do click on the subscriber button down there. It's free to subscribe, and click on the bell for instant notifications for when we post new videos. And if you want to support the channel, then do check out the PayPal buttons or patreon.com PowerPlayChess link, and you'll find them in the video description and in the tab up there as well. Right, let's get on with the game. So Maja Chiburdanidze, well, she's a legend in the chess world, and she carried on this extraordinary tradition of Georgian women chess players. So she defeated Nona Gaprindashvili to win the world title in 1978, and Chiburdanidze became Women's World Champion at the age of 17. So she was a prodigy and, well, such an extraordinary talent. So this game was played in 1980 in the Soviet Championship semi-final, and she's playing against Dvoirys. So it's a Najdorf variation, and Chiburdanidze played bishop g5. The adventure begins. And Dvoirys plays a line which has a good reputation, and not bishop e7, the old main line, or poison pawn with queen b6, but knight d7 and queen c7 and b5. Now this is a line that's been played by, for example, Boris Gelfand, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, Ilya Smirin, very strong players. Anand has played it as well. So black is advancing quickly on the queen side. Now, this involves great risk from black because lines are opening very quickly, and white has various ways to sacrifice here. One line, for example, that if you're going to play this you have to be aware of is e5, threatening the rook, queen h3, and then this sacrifice on e6, which leads to unbelievable complications. Black seems to be okay though. That's the latest word from our computer analysts. But bishop d3 is the normal move. Bishop b7, so that's important for black to aim at the queen very quickly, and the rook comes into the middle. And here, of course, bishop e7 would lead back into, well, one of the old main lines, but that's meant to be pretty good for white. It's possible to castle the queen side here, but the critical move, and this looks very strange, is to play queen b6. So the queen has moved twice, but you had to play the queen to c7 in order to play b5, of course. So what's the idea behind queen b6? Well, black wants to push this knight away from the center, and then pressure will be eased on black's position. So, for example, if knight b3, then it's possible to play rook c8 and even threaten a quick exchange sacrifice. You can also play b4 there as well. Both these moves give black a reasonable game. And this is, well, I mentioned Vachier-Lagrave and Gelfand have played this, but this is quite an old line, in fact. Played, going right back into the 1950s. But it's here that Chiburdanidze, remember it's played in 1980, this game, Chiburdanidze introduces a new move, and it's a shocking move. It's not, well, it's a typical sacrifice for these kind of Sicilian lines, but it's her follow-up which I think caught her opponent by surprise. And remember, this is way before computer preparation, so she either prepared it herself, or possibly with a trainer, I don't know, or she found it at the board. I suspect it's preparation, but this is what we're about to see is very, very impressive. So knight d5, well, this of course is a standard sacrifice, but I guess the reason this wasn't played before this game, although this is a known line, is that well, after pawn takes pawn check, you can see that opens up the e-file. The king can simply escape c7, and black is absolutely fine there. But it's in this position, after pawn takes knight, that Chiburdanidze plays an extraordinary move, a really beautiful move, which is just incredible. Just before I show you that, I should mention for all those theory hounds out there that queen takes d4 in this position actually has a reasonable reputation. It involves a queen sacrifice, but you'll find, well, for example, Maxime Vacher-Legrave has played this, and others, and it's reasonable for black. Anyway, let's crack on with the game. E takes d5, knight c6. Now this is the incredible move. What a follow-up to this piece sacrifice. Putting another knight on prise, and what a daring sortie into black's position. Well, what's the big idea? Well, black can't escape with the king to d8, and of course queenside castling is impossible as the king can't go through the line of the knight. So that means straight away there is a threat to play, to take on d5 with a devastating check. So black has to deal with this somehow very, very quickly. Dvoirys played the, well, what you think is the most natural move to take the knight. Incredibly, it's possible to take here. Niels Grandelius, Swedish Grandmaster, has played this a couple of times, which looks like suicide. And following up with this move, this is, of course, computer aided. And this is just about playable for black if you play a kind of string of only moves. Anyway, that's another story. So bishop takes knight, the most natural move. So e takes d5, check. Now here's the difference. If the king goes to d8, then we can take. Now the king is definitely not safe in this position. So the knight moves, and then c7 check, and queen takes rook, and white is simply material ahead, and the black king doesn't look too clever on this square either. So let's come back to this position. So white has just taken here, and the black king is in check. Therefore, bishop e7. So then pawn takes bishop. So white is still a piece down, but obviously has superb compensation because the king can't exit from the middle very easily at all because of this pin. Bishop f5, and that kind of seals things, as queenside castling just simply isn't going to be possible here. Since this game was played in 1980, as I've mentioned with these other games, this has become quite a main variation actually. But it's incredible that this has been played, this exact line has been played in quite a few other games. Black has fallen for this. So for example here we've got rook d8 and rook a7 have both been played in other games, and black got crushed in those. Dvoirys played queen c7. Frankly, I think it's really, really bad for black, whatever happens. Now, a very daring follow-up from Chiburdanidze. Well, a vigorous follow-up. Pawn to b4. You can only get away with this kind of move, damaging the pawns in front of your king, weakening your king position, if you maintain the initiative. This was actually played in another game where white took on e6, which at first glance looks pretty good. fact, this would be a huge mistake. And now black castle queenside, mistake. In fact, if black castle's kingside, black's king finds reasonable security there, and then suddenly it'll be black's turn on the queen side. So it just shows you, if white isn't careful, if white gets it wrong, it's still possible to lose this position. But Chiburdanidze follows up with the best move, queen h5. Threatening to take the knight because of the pin, and of course queen h5 discourages queenside castling because f7 would be on prise, and discourages kingside castling as well. So this knight has to move. Let me see, if it just goes back to f8, then white could just double on the e file, and that's devastating. So knight g7 played, attacking the queen. Check. And queen h6. So although there's no immediate kill, black is still just really tied up. d5, trying to break out. Opening this diagonal as well. But again, Chiburdanidze understands very well the power of the initiative, and she takes the bishop and gives a check. So now she is a whole rook down. Let's just have a quick look at king d6. It's always nice to go to mate. Here we go, and mate next move. Very nice. So the king had to go back to f8, and now queen takes f6. So black a whole rook up, but with this rook completely out of the game. This knight can't move. This rook is doing nothing. The queen looking pretty bad as well. I mean, black's position is an utter mess. King g8 played. And now rook e7, threatening the pawn here, so the rook has to come across to defend. I mean, what a jam for black here. And in fact, white is breaking through straight away with this very visual move, bishop e6, really beautiful. Let's just have a quick look at knight takes bishop, because it leads to checkmate. There we are. And that's picturesque as well. An epaulette checkmate. So in this position, queen takes rook. And now knight takes will lead to something similar after f5. Once the knight moves, then the queen just heads back to g5 again. So pawn takes. And now it's time for the c pawn to advance, and there is absolutely no defense here. And the game finished like this. Queen takes rook check. And the rook dropped in the corner. So black decided, as he's a queen down, that enough was enough, and he resigned here. What a fantastic game. And I should say thank you very much for this suggestion from one of my viewers who recommended that I should look at this game, and I do so very gladly. It's a very important game theoretically in the Najdorf. I'm an exponent of the Najdorf. I really love the opening, and this is a very important game. But more than that, it's an absolutely beautiful game, and I think showcases the talent of Maya Chiburdanidze. She was a worthy world champion, and very nice person. I've met her on several occasions. I played against her a couple of times, and yeah, I can say that she's a really lovely person. So thanks very much for watching. Remember, if you're not a subscriber, click the subscribe button, and do check out the playlist with other games by women players. And I'm going to look in my next video at another crushing game, and this time it'll be by Judith Polgar. Thanks for watching.